What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. Before I get this video started, I would just like to say thank you so much for 11,000 subscribers. 11,000 people, that truly blows my mind. And knowing that my channel has this big of a fan base, with people requesting videos left and right, it truly makes me feel loved. And it's definitely gotten me out of a lot of bad times. So thank you all so much, and here's to many, many more adventures with your old pal, Cedar Flags. So my last video, if you don't know, was ranking the top 10 most underrated coasters I've ever ridden. The video actually did really good for a personal list, and a lot of the commenters wanted a second part, but instead of underrated, to do overrated roller coasters, and I thought that was a really good idea. If you don't know already, overrated means overhyped. A ride that is hyped so much that you expect high expectations from it, and then come off with a weird taste, and your hopes given up. So let's get right into the video. Today I have 10 overrated roller coasters that I have personally ridden. Now, a few things before I get right into the list. First off, I have 2 honorable mentions and then 8 roller coasters. These 2 honorable mentions are roller coasters I think are overrated, but don't deserve to be in the same group as the rest of the list, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Second off, I think all of these roller coasters are great. Don't get confused with the terms overrated and bad, because they necessarily don't mean the same. In fact, I like all 10 of these rides a lot, and these 10 rides are definitely in my top 50, or at the very least my top 75. So let's get right into this list. Coming in at the first honorable mention spot, we have Afterburn at Carowinds. So why is Afterburn an honorable mention? Well, because I rode in a pretty bad row for a B&M invert. I rode in row number 3. This ride is very highly regarded for its back row rides, giving some pretty good positive G-forces throughout the entire ride. Back then, I didn't know as much about roller coasters, though I did, but I wasn't assured that the back row would be the best. So I just decided to hop on a random row and get my one ride on this coaster. And it was pretty underwhelming. Nowhere near as forceful as those back row rides I've gotten on Raptor and Banshee. So when I got off of this, I was disappointed, but I do realize I need to get back there again to get a back row ride. The next one is Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. One of the most well-regarded rides on the planet, doesn't even make my top 20. Not because I think it's necessarily an overrated ride, but because it really isn't my cup of tea. I'm a huge airtime fanatic, and while I love positive Gs, I think airtime is the strong point of my favorite rides. That's just my personal taste, and if you have a taste in positives, good for you. Make this your number one for all I care. But me, I really don't see this ride as good quality as some other airtime machines, and though it is in my top 25, it does not break that 20 spot. Despite all of that, I still do think this ride is absolutely insane, just not as enjoyable as a ride like Twisted Timbers, which is non-stop airtime, as opposed to non-stop positive Gs. It really just matters what you like more. So, we have reached the top 8 spot. So the top 8 consists of roller coasters I just find overhyped. Nothing bad about them, but I do think that they get a lot more hype than they deserve. And maybe I've ridden these rides on bad days, maybe I rode this ride in an unstable condition, but at the same time, these are just my personal ride experiences and my personal opinions, so take them with a grain of salt. The number 8 spot goes to Lightning Racer at Hershey Park. This is a dueling GCI located in the back of the park, and I had really high expectations for this one. I've looked at a bunch of POVs for this ride, and I heard very positive reviews. So when I got off of the ride, I was pretty disappointed. Why is that? The lack of G-forces on this ride. I rode in the front, I rode in the back, and could not find a single moment of ejector airtime on this thing. Maybe a few pops of floater, but nothing that absolutely amazed me. And compared to some other wooden coasters I've ridden, well, this really didn't give that much. This was more of just a forgettable racing coaster at Hershey Park. In fact, it is my least favorite wooden coaster at Hershey Park, and I much prefer Wildcat and Comet. At the number 7 spot, we have Great Bear at the same park, Hershey Park. This is the B&M invert at the park, and let me tell you why I think it's a bit overrated. This ride gets about the same hype as some other B&M inverts I've ridden, like Raptor and Batman at Great America. And while I absolutely love those rides, I was a little disappointed when I got off of Great Bear. While rides like Raptor and Batman have some incredibly forceful elements, some great whip, and some fast transitions, it felt pretty forceless compared to some of the other ones I've ridden. At the number 6 spot, we have another B&M. It is Thunderbird at Holiday World in Indiana. This is often regarded as the best B&M wing coaster in the United States, and I've gotten the pleasure to ride all four, and I personally think this is on the lower half. Many people say this is the crown jewel of B&M wings in the country because of its G-forces. Now, I do think it is slightly more forceful than some of the other B&M wings I've ridden, but I don't think it's forceful enough to take it from the number 1 spot. Personally, I don't like to take G-forces in a factor for B&M wings because, let's face it, they're nowhere near as forceful as some of the other ride models. So when I ride a ride like Wild Eagle and Gatekeeper, which have much better environments and better inversion collections, as well as longer durations, I enjoy the rides more than I do on Thunderbird. Coming in at the number 5 spot, we have Magnum XL 200, the Aero Hyper located at Cedar Point. Now, I get this ride has a lot of haters, but the people that love this ride put it way out of proportion in my personal opinion. Some people say this is in the top 3 at Cedar Point, and I really think that they've lost their minds. Magnum is a good ride, but in my personal opinion, it just feels like any other old school Aero, like Gemini right next to it, or even Cedar Creek Mine Ride. While the airtime on Magnum isn't really violent, it's just painful. While Storm Chaser has some incredibly great ejector airtime, Magnum's just hurts. The profiling is outdated, and it's honestly the hyper version of an old school outdated Aero Looper. At the number 4 spot, we have yet another aerodynamics coaster. It is Tennessee Tornado at Tennessee's very own Dollywood. Now, I freaking love Dollywood. This park is beautiful. And when they said that they were going to resurrect the Aero Looper at this park, many people were excited. And it is a phenomenal ride through and through, no matter what I have to say about it. My personal grudge with this ride is that it is nowhere near as smooth as people advertise. People say this is much smoother than any other Aero Looper out there, and I definitely have to disagree. I think a ride like Carolina Cyclone is a lot more enjoyable and a lot smoother. I don't really know why this is, but when I rode Tennessee Tornado the few times I was jerked around the entire time. At one point, hitting my restraint pretty violently. Once again, it is still a very enjoyable ride, but I think it's on the same level as a low-tier B&M Looper. Not really that interesting. Speaking of B&M Loopers, we are going to go down to Florida to talk about Busch Gardens Tampa. What are we talking about? We are talking about Kumba, the B&M sit-down from the early 1990s. When people say this is the best ride in the park, or this is one of the best B&Ms, I have to disagree for a few reasons. It definitely does its job, portraying some insane G-forces and great laterals, but I didn't think it was any more forceful than some of the other B&M Loopers I've ridden. Now, you want to ride a much more forceful B&M Looper, something that overshadows everything else? Walk to the front of the park and ride yourself some Montu. That ride is world class, and definitely one of the best B&Ms on the planet. The number 2 spot goes to another GCI wooden roller coaster. It is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. When a lot of people say that this is the best ride at Kings Island, I really don't see the hype. Now, I really do like this ride, and it gets a place in my top 30. It has some pretty abrupt moments, but what I like on a ride is balls to the wall ejector airtime. And while a lot of people claim that you get it on this ride, I really didn't feel it that much. I felt more of strong floater, because the pops are so fast you really don't have the time to eject. Now, people like fast pacing, minimal airtime, fast transitions. This is basically the wooden i305. The only difference is that i305 is advertised to be intensity focused. This is advertised to be airtime focused. So when I focused on a world-class airtime machine like an RMC, I was pretty disappointed. Though this ride is still phenomenal and definitely has its place in the park. Coming in at the number 1 spot, we have the one and the only Voyage at Holiday World. Now, if you're a big fan of this channel, you definitely know that this is the most overrated coaster I've ever ridden. Now, when I say overrated, like I said, take it with a big grain of salt. I am a big fan of this ride, and it is in my top 30. But it is nowhere near my top 10, let alone my top 5, where most people put the Voyage. I think this is a great ride, but people think this is a phenomenal ride. When people said there was going to be ejector airtime, I was expecting my number 2 or number 3 coaster, and I got off barely experiencing any airtime at all. I felt no ejector airtime in about 2 or 3 moments of floater. It was still a good ride and had a phenomenal setting, and let's face it, is one of the most impressive coasters ever built. It is beautiful. There was something that was missing, and it was that insane ejector airtime that many people advertise. And even in the weather, I still didn't get it. It felt more like the Beast than anything else. I definitely want to get a redemption ride on this someday, maybe even during the Hollywood Nights event, just to see what it truly is like and its full potential. Or maybe I just think it's overrated as it is. But anyway, what do you think in the comments below about all of these rides? Do you think they're underrated? Do you think they're overrated? Just letting you all know, this is probably one of my first more negative videos in a while. I like to talk about the greater side of roller coasters, but today, I got a lot of requests for this and I thought it would be a fun topic. Anyways, this is Cedar Flags and I will see you all later.